Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer, and want to just thank you, everybody, for supporting our channel, supporting Patreon. We're going strong there, Instagram, Twitter, and today we're reacting to various headlines of the day. We're going to start out with the case of the sex trafficking case of Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, the trial started this week. They did jury selection, and when you do jury selection in federal court, the judge is the one who questions the jurors. You can come up with some questions of your own, but the judge pretty much takes charge of that process. Then you sit down, and then you decide who you want to kick off, basically, and you get a certain amount of peremptory challenges, which means that you can kick somebody off for any or no reason as long as it's race and not one of the protected classes. So race neutral, religious neutral. You can't kick somebody off because they're Chinese, for example, or they're black. So they got the jury selection, then they did opening statements. Now we heard from quite a number of witnesses this week. We heard from the pilot, who called Ghislaine Maxwell the number 2, and that Jeffrey Epstein was the big number 1. We heard from a few accusers or victims, and then we also heard from one of the staffers. One of the things that I think is absolutely incredible about this case is, let's just start with the name of his airplane, the Lolita Express. That is what we call self-snitching. Lolita is a term for a precocious young girl, seductive young girl. That is, look it up. And he called his plane the Lolita Express. All right, whatever. It also came out from the pilot that that Bill Clinton was on his airplane 26 times, that Prince Andrew was on his airplane, and so on and so on. So a lot of famous people. And you don't really hear a whole lot about this part of it. But when you have a guy and he had a property in the Bahamas, he had a property in Florida, he had a property in New York, and he had a property in New Mexico. All big spreads, really big spreads. He was worth, I think, at least $500 million. Now, that being said, he didn't get all that money legitimately. But that's not what this case is about. This case is about Ghislaine Maxwell's trafficking young girls, recruiting young girls, and bringing them to Jeffrey Epstein for his sick pedophilic pleasure. So we also heard from, we'll get into the victim testimony in a second, but we also heard from one of the staffers. And I think it's just absolutely phenomenal that, and part of the evidence was the handbook. The employee handbook. You see nothing, you say nothing, you don't ask questions, and you speak only when directly spoken to. That was part of their absolute directives. That's terrible. That is absolutely terrible when it comes down to how it meshes with what the girls' testimony are. Now, when you have a case like this, it's very difficult from the defense perspective, because why would a 14-year-old girl be at Jeffrey Epstein's house? Can you give me any good reason why they should be? Are they models and he's a photographer? He's going to help them become a model? Or are they masseurs and he's going to teach them how to massage his dick? That's probably the more accurate answer. And it came out that Ghislaine Maxwell would recruit these young ladies. That it would start out with and they actually brought in the green massage table into evidence from his Palm Beach estate, and so then they would begin to massage him. And that would turn slowly grooming them into sex, and Ghislaine Maxwell would participate in it sometimes. So. So you have some facts in this case that are undisputed. One, Ghislaine Maxwell had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. No question about it. They're very close. That's a fact. That's not even in question. That she was his assistant, and she did things for him, including recruiting girls. Not a fact that is in dispute. The young ladies that are now testifying, the only thing you can really go after them for from a defense perspective is try to say that they're trying to cash in, that that this was Jeffrey Epstein's doing, not her doing, that that their memory is not accurate, and that's the only way you can go after them. But you have some hardcore facts that you just can't get around, that these girls were all there, that that they were told to do sexual things, and there's no other viable explanation for their presence, and that is going to be a big hurdle for the defense in this case. Now, if she's aiding, abetting, otherwise conspiring, basically conspiracy law is where two people agree to commit a crime and just an act in furtherance of the crime. And aiding and abetting is still, something like that. But her actually recruiting girls is the actual act of sex trafficking. And her guidelines are going to be absolutely astronomical. And then there will be grounds for probably an upward departure. So you can better bet that she's going to look at anywhere from 240 to 365 months, which is a long, long time. So that's what we know about Ghislaine Maxwell. They're going to start up again on Monday, and we'll see where the rest of the case goes. So the next case I'd like to talk about is Kimberly Potter. Now, Kimberly Potter was a field training officer in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, or Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. And she was on duty one day, and they stopped a young man by the name of Dante Wright. And Dante Wright had a warrant, but they stopped him for expired tabs. And I happen to know a little bit about this because a couple of friends of mine are trying the case, Earl Gray and Paul Eng, two of Minnesota's finest lawyers that could ever walk the face of the earth. They're awesome guys, really, really smart people. And then you have, on the other side, you have the Attorney General's office, who is prosecuting the case. Now, what happened was Kimberly Potter was on duty. She was, they had stopped Mr. Wright, asked him to get out of the car. It turns out he had a warrant. I can't remember what the warrant was for. And then he decides to run. And it's unclear. Her partner's hand might have been in the car at the time, but and he starts to take off. And as he's trying to drive away, Kimberly Potter grabs what she thinks is her taser. She grabs but she grabs her gun instead, and she points it at Dante Wright and says, "Taser, taser, taser! Pop, pop, pop." I don't know how many times she shot him, but she shot him and killed him. So this is that's the nature of the case itself. They just did jury selection this week, and will be opening starting opening statements on Wednesday of next week. So the question in that trial that we're going to follow is she's charged with 2 counts. She's counted with manslaughter in the first degree and manslaughter in the second degree. Let's break those down just a little bit real quick. Manslaughter in the first degree is misdemeanor manslaughter, causing the death of another during the course of a commission of a misdemeanor. Now, but both manslaughter cases require the same thing, an awareness of what you're doing. The second count is manslaughter in the second degree, which means you cause the death through culpable negligence. In other words, you have an appreciation for the danger that you're facing, and you don't give a shit and you just go ahead and do it anyway. The government is going to have to show that she knew she was pulling her gun and fired it anyway, and say that she was unjustified. The defense is going to show, and she's going to testify in this case. They said it in their voir dire, the jury selection. So when she gets up there and testifies, she's going to say, I thought I was pulling my taser. I really thought I was pulling my taser. And that's consistent with what the video shows. So she fires her taser into him, or fires her gun into him, but as she's pulling her gun, she's yelling, taser, taser, taser. In other words, everybody get away because I'm going to tase this guy. So if she just made a mistake, not just made a mistake, it's a big mistake, but if she made a mistake and didn't have the culpable negligence, she can't be found guilty of that crime. Could she be found liable, like for negligence? You're damn right she could. Regardless of what happens in the criminal context, the city certainly is going to be liable, and so would she be liable for negligence, because you really should know, what side your firearm is on, especially if you're a field training officer. But there's a big difference between criminal liability and civil liability. And it's my guess is that she'll be acquitted in this trial because the state just doesn't have the elements needed to prove their case. So that's an update from the Maxwell case and the Kimberly Potter case. And, in the Kimberly Potter case, we've had all kinds of protesters across the street, but you know what? They were super peaceful. And, I don't have the same sense that we're going to get that kind of same vibe that we had during the George Floyd riots. Everybody seems to have tamed down quite a bit, and let's just hope it stays that way. So this is Bruce Rivers. Thank you for watching another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. If you're watching this, you should subscribe. You should follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and Patreon is going strong. Get yourself a hat and spread the word. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.